Okay, so somebody recently asked me what is the best place to listen to when argue with sovereign citizens online. And one of the best places to do that is TalkShoe, which is kind of like an internet radio thing where they have little shows and conferences to talk about stuff. One of the most popular ones is My Private Audio with Angela Stark. And this week, her guest was Pete Hendrickson. And Pete is a very interesting guy. As a recent court decision explained, Pete Hendrickson wrote Cracking the Code. He describes himself as a researcher, analyst, and scholar. Add to that, felon and serial tax evader. Continue on. Hendrickson's first felony indictment was in 1991. Basically put a bomb in a mailbox. Moving on, he pled guilty to the superseding indictment, and then in 2008 he was indicted a second time, 10 counts of filing false documents, blah blah blah, basically false tax returns. And this is the interesting part. This indictment is notable because it came after he wrote Cracking the Code. So basically, he wrote a manual on how to not pay taxes, and afterwards, he was indicted and found guilty of basically tax evasion. And even worse, his own wife was sentenced to jail on April 2015 for basically for filing false tax returns. So even though he's gone to jail multiple times, and his wife for tax evasion, he goes on the internet to tell people not to pay taxes. But anyways, he wrote an interesting thing recently that contains an interesting sentence, which I like. Basically, he's complaining about the Parker decision, which I'm gonna link or whatever. Basically, he's complaining that that a court said that Bruce Shaber said that the 16th Amendment provided the constitutional basis for the imposition of a direct non-apportioned tax. Pete gets really angry and calls the judge a lunatic and a moron or a scoundrel, and says that the Supreme Court said exactly the opposite of what the Parker court said. And he quotes this small segment of the Bruce Shaber decision that says that, quote, "This confusion arises from the conclusion that the 16th Amendment provides an unknown power to tax," which he cherry picks to argue that the Supreme Court in this case said that the 16th Amendment does not give the power to levy an income tax, which is half right. If we go to the actual decision, this is what the case, what the Supreme Court actually said. Quote, "This is the text of the amendment. Congress shall have the power, blah, blah, blah." And this is the important part. "It is clear on the face of this text that it does not purport to confer the power to levy income taxes in a generic sense." And that is where tax protesters usually stop reading the quote. But you have to read the full thing. What it then says is that an authority already possessed and never questioned. In other words, the 16th Amendment does not need to give Congress the power to tax income because it already had that power. Continuing, the whole purpose of the 16th Amendment was to relieve all income taxes from the apportionment requirements. So Pete Hendrickson's entire argument is based on misreading the Bruce Shaber decision. But down here is the thing that I think is really interesting. Okay, in this this paragraph here. So the Fifth Circuit Court is flatly wrong. The Parker Court is crazy wrong. The Bruce Shaber Court says exactly what the opposite of what the Parker Court asserts. However, despite being wrong on what the court says, the ruling has been cited by subsequent courts as authority for the wrong, indeed crazy wrong prospect that the income tax is a non-apportioned direct tax. If we let this go on, we'll soon be buried in garbage. Signed, Pete Hendrickson. And I want to call this the courts are wrong fallacy. And why is it a fallacy? Because basically courts can't be wrong. What a court decides is because courts have the power to say what the law is. The moment they say something is X, that becomes the true interpretation of the law. By definition, the courts can't be wrong. Just like, for example, as an analogy, a referee can also not be wrong. If a referee says that, let's say you stepped on the line in a football game or soccer game, whatever, because the referee's decision is final, that is what carries. The referee basically can't be wrong. You can't disagree with the referee. Their decision is final. So arguing with the referee is not going to change the fact that you lost the game. And of course, our system of government has a method for dealing with situations in which we disagree with what the courts say. For example, in the case of Dred Scott, a lot of people didn't like that decision because it stated that it decided that people of African descent could not be citizens. The way that was dealt with was the law was changed, the Constitution was changed to allow people of African descent to become citizens. Now, in Pete's case, if the courts are wrong about the income tax, either the Constitution needs to be modified or the laws need to be modified to make his claim that you don't have to pay income taxes true. Until then, he's basically wasting his time by arguing that the courts are wrong. Because if somebody listens to him on the radio or on the internet and stops paying his taxes, he's going to go to a court that has already decided that he does actually have to pay taxes, and he's going to end up in jail like Pete and his wife. So it's completely irresponsible for Pete to be doing this. And this is how ridiculous the movement is. This is an ex-convict who's gone to jail multiple times for tax-related crimes, and he's still out there on the internet pretending to be an expert in tax law, even though he has never beaten the IRS in court, and even though he has put a whole bunch of people in jail for tax evasion.